Hello and welcome to Deep Dives with New Perspectives. I'm Michael Bartlett.
I'm Merrylin LeBlanc. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Maryland. If you like what we're offering here, please hit like, share with your friends, subscribe, leave comments, ask us questions. We're just two Aquarian suns with Scorpio moons trying to look at what's going on in the world and make some sense of it.
That's for sure. And talking about Scorpio moons, the sign of Scorpio is said to be ruled by Mars, the planet Mars, along with Pluto. And what's interesting this week is how many planets we have in one of Mars's signs. It's a sign of Aries. So we want to talk about that today, right?
Yeah, we've got Sun, Mercury, Venus, Chiron. Is there anyone else, or is that enough? That's a stellium.
Well, we could talk about
Eris.
the aster Eris, and who's a newly found planetoid, relatively new, and Ceres, this asteroid. She's there as well. So it's a loaded thing, and in terms of the context of the whole horoscope, what I've noticed over the past several months is that except for the moon, because she goes around the whole zodiac every month, all of the major bodies that we astrologers look at in common have been located in one half of the horoscope. Now, occasionally, not now, the moon is in that half as well, but occasionally the moon slips out, and so they're forming what we call a bowl pattern. Yes, it's sort of like this is the area. And it's, right now, if we include the nodes, it's from the sign of Gemini, where Mars is actually, Aries, what we want to talk about, planet, to the opposite sign of Sagittarius. And I was thinking, gosh, and Aries is kind of in the middle of that, not quite. It's sort of off a little bit to one side of it. If we look at the areas of our charts that bowl covers, I mean, it's like where all the energy is. And for me, I know all that energy is in the side of my chart that has to do with my relationships, both interpersonal and public. And that's where I'm having to put all of my energy these days. And my Aries is in my 7th house of relationships. Where's yours?
Mine is in the 5th house of self-expression and creativity. And the other thing I was just thinking when you talked about the nodes, this is a nodal return for all of my birth buddies and at like 65, right? A lot of us mid-60s individuals have this, Gemini Sagittarius nodal point. So all of that for me is hitting down the bottom. It's all hitting me in the very personal, so it's like processing things, figuring things out. How do I want to express myself? What do I want to do? How am I seeing things? How am I creating the space around me in ways that support me to go out into the world? My progressed sun is actually in Aries right now. So it's a very, and I just think of this, Aries as a cardinal sign is very instinctual. It doesn't, one of the signs I like to say is where angels fear to tread. It doesn't ask questions, it acts. And then it goes, oh, wait a minute, what happened?
I remember because my progressed sun is in Taurus now, but when it was in Aries, I mean, that's when I became an entrepreneur. Actually, I thought I'm not going to go back into education, and started this. This was in California. Actually, I even initiated a corporation related to it. It's kind of interesting, a whole different experience.
It really is. So, I mean, it's great. I mean, when I see this, and then also, Aries is 0 degrees. Aries is considered the world point. And so while we have these, Sun, Venus, Mercury, which are like our 3 most intimate, except for the moon and Mars, those would be making a total group of 5. These are like some of our most intimate personal planets. And then we have a Chiron with the wound in there. And so like, I'm kind of wondering, what's going to get expressed from on the collective level, right? What is it? Because it's like, it's you know, when we're driving down the road and someone cuts us off and all of a sudden we're giving them the finger, it's like, it's that immediate. It's like, there's not, it's a reaction, right? That's what I think about with this energy. And what's needed more than ever is like for us to be able to, and I have a hard time doing that personally.
You reminded me right now, and we've talked about this before on Deep Dive, the the George Floyd trial that's going on here. You know, the question not only of Black Lives Matter, but an individual Black man and how his life matters, and the Chiron effect of bringing some healing, some wholeness to that. And yeah, so it's kind of an amazing individuals. And the chief of police, I mean, the testifying and saying that Chauvin used uncalled for force that was not approved. But I mean, and he being a Black man, I mean, it's sort of like, is justice coming? And in she's not there yet, but I don't know exactly. I didn't check when she will. But in Pisces, the sign before Aries, we have Pallas Athene heading towards Pisces. And so maybe justice is coming.
Well, I mean, it's going to be very interesting because I mean, I think what's also struck me so much is the pain and trauma, not only that, of course, George Floyd went through, but those onlookers. I mean, you know, when they talk about, you know, what they should have, what they could have done. And, you know, even, you know, it'll be interesting when they get to the point of interviewing the other officers. I can't remember if they're going to be able to testify or not, but it's just the powerless, you know, like that's one person who made that decision over all of those individuals around them. This is that 1% thing that I think we're starting to really become aware of. And, you know, when the masses, you know, I think of Bastille Day, I think of, you know, what happened in France, I think of like the American Revolution, the French Revolution, you know, when the larger group of people understand from a correct viewpoint that what they've been enduring is incorrect and needs to change, that's when things are going to happen. I mean, like I said, I think last week or the week before, if this jury, I mean, I will be very, very surprised if they don't find him guilty. I know there are many people who think that they're not going to find him guilty or whatever, but I think, you know, especially with, thank God for the testimony from the chief. But I mean, this is an individual who's working out their own vendetta, their own issues on their job, and that is not the place for a peace officer or a police officer.
Right, right.
That's not that's not helping people feel safe. No one in that group, no one who has witnessed that video, no one, regardless of what's gone on or what happened before that, there's no one who witnessed it that can come away saying that that was okay.
And what you're saying with all this energy now in the sign of Aries, it's almost like every single one of us has in some way, maybe not on this particular issue, but or situation, but in some way we're going like, I need to protect myself. I need I need to fight for my rights. I need to stand up and say, I am here and I matter. That's very strongly what this energy is about, you know,
And
and
that's
no
what I
matter
mean when you
where.
think about it, and that's what George was doing when he was done there. He was like saying who he was, and it's like what that whole event showed us and showed the world is how much indoctrination we have in this country that makes that sort of behavior okay. There are, I mean, for that one episode and for the Breonna Taylor episode and the other episodes that are now finally coming to light, you know, for every one of those, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of other individuals who have dealt with that as well. And some who live to tell about it and some who will never know what the truth is. And, you know, if we go back into the 60s, you know, the horror stories I used to hear of, you know, hippies and gay individuals who were on the West Coast who would be hitchhiking or whatever, and the police officers would pick them up and never to be found again. You know, so there's this power over, and I think, you know, with this strong, you know, what's really nice, like you talked about the bull pattern, you know, we had that huge focus of energy in Capricorn, and then we have that huge energy of focus in Aquarius, and it's moving through the signs. And so it's like it's almost like giving us like this, because every time, as you know, when the planets come into conjunction, that's a new birth. So we're getting all these like multiplications of new births, which gives us a new opportunity to visit these old ways of looking at things and choose something different. In the now, we have the opportunity to choose something different. And I think the hard part is that because of our conditioning, we've learned not to speak up. We've learned that it's not okay. There's something that makes us feel uncomfortable, because some of us have learned that and are actually conflict adverse. There are others of us who actually don't have any problem bringing the conflict to the table, because the truth is it needs to be brought to the table. It needs to be brought to the awareness. The boil needs to be popped. Our issues of racism and sexism and all the other isms that have gone on, religions, one religion over another. Oh my God, really? Like God is choosing some kind of favorite, like, oh, you're my favorite and the rest of you aren't. I mean, who the hell wants a God like that? I mean, that's just another human being who's acting like that. It's
You
time for
just
change, and we all have to speak our voices.
you've just said why I left Catholicism is being taught, oh, people have to be baptized as a Catholic to go to heaven. And I'd go like, okay. I mean, as a child, I believed that. As an adult, I'm going like, what kind of God is that? I don't think that's the kind of God that I want to believe in.
I started having, I have to admit, as a young Catholic, when I realized the number of children who couldn't possibly get baptized in time before they die, like in
Right.
that like what God would, that's not, there's no place in my cosmology and my ideology of what everything is that allows for that on any level. We're all aspects of the divine, and this is
Interesting
another aspect of power.
It's interesting on this topic, though, that there's a kind of an Aryan flavor to that,
Mm.
where it's sort of like, but I'm the best. I matter. So it's my way or the highway. And
Ooh.
and that, yeah. So it's sort of like this kind of um, in the individual, and whether the individual is a human being, one single human being, or an entity, an organization, or a country, one organization. And that's kind of how I look at you from a religious perspective, how I look at, the Catholic Church. What the Catholic Church has evolved into is an organization that has been seeking its own survival, and not necessarily true to the Christian message. I mean, to me, that treat other people as you want to be treated is the essence of Christianity, the essence of Christianity. And yet we don't always hear that. We do, it's to some, and actually it's Judeo-Christian, actually, because it's also in the Jewish traditions. And yet we don't, I mean, that somehow or other, this goes to Aries, somehow the individual strength, and again, whether it's a person or an organization, the individual strength is so bent on surviving and having its way. Or
Over the right way.
yeah.
And I think that's the thing, is I think, again, I think in our conditioning, we've been repeatedly through, our schools, through our religions, through society, we're trained to look at it a certain way that doesn't allow us. Is, what do we call it? Cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
It's when you're looking at something and it's like, the words that most of us will say when we're looking at something that doesn't make sense in that way is we'll call it surreal. But the truth is, it's simply real. It's not surreal. It's the fact that our image in our head, our concept of whatever that is so fixed in such a way that it is impossible to let that other thing register in a way that is true for what it is. It's like the Native Americans seeing Columbus's ships coming. They saw these things coming, off the shore. Like, what is it? It'll be the same when the spaceships show up in the sky. Like, what, we don't have a concept of what that is. So our little mind, the little wheels in our heads keep whirling around trying to make sense of it. very Aquarian, right? But also Aries, because there's a survival mechanism involved in that, right? Is it a threat or is it going to be okay? And the truth is, our country is so, with the Cancer focus, hello, sun and Cancer, our focus is on our security. And as long as we pick our security over the rightness of action and right human relationship with our neighbors and our communities and our states and other countries, none of this is going to change.
Right. But bringing up the country too, it reminds me that all this energy in Aries is, if you overlay it to like the Declaration of Independence chart, it's in a last quarter phase to that Cancer sun and the Cancer energy in the chart. And a last quarter phase is when, one has to take charge and perhaps reflect upon how we've been and revise things. And I can't help but look at President Biden and how he's doing things that weren't quite expected, at least from my perspective. I don't know about other people. And yet I'm going like, he's actually reflected very deeply on the state of the country and taking a stand, taking charge of directions we need to take. Now, of course, some progressives are saying he's not going full enough, we need to add but the fact that he's actually putting forth a direction that's above and beyond what I think, at least the people I communicate with in the Democratic Party, would have expected of him when the primaries were going on.
I mean, we haven't seen, I completely agree with you. We haven't seen another Democrat do something like this since maybe Johnson, and before that, Roosevelt, in the sense of like addressing a deep and fundamental need. The Republicans have been selling this idea of trickle down, oh, if you don't tax the wealthy, these things will trickle down. But the truth is, and I forgot who the famous person who said this, if you give money to the poor, the truth is they are likely by the end of the day to have spent that money, but that money's being put into circulation. That money's being spent. It's not being put into a savings account. It's not being put into a 6th or 7th or 10th house. It's actually being put back into the economy, which is what really helps everyone. I love Biden's idea of like wiping out the school, the student debt. Here, these are, and there's a part of Aries. We've got to think before there was Uranus discovered, Mercury played this role. So here's Mercury hanging out there in Aries with all the other ones and going, hey, you know what kind of revolution can we create? What kind of change can we create that's going to make everyone help? Because Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Chiron, how do we communicate, shine out, and change our values for the collective better?
Yes, boy, quite the deal that we have going on in terms of this. And Mercury is heading towards Chiron, bringing up Mercury, and both of these have a lot to do with healing. The healing arts and what kinds of information is necessary and important for that healing to go on. And I had a conversation with somebody the other day about the healing arts, and it's wonderful that through the Affordable Care Act and through Medicaid and Medicare, that more and more people have access to the medical profession, but it not quite in this mainstream medical profession are all these alternative doctors. They've got the credentials, who are discovering amazing things about our bodies, but you have to search for them on the internet, or some friend tells you check this out or whatever. I mean, I have learned
insurance
more.
is probably going to pay for it.
Insurance is going to pay for it.
It's probably not going to pay for it.
Right. Oh, exactly. No,
but it's worth it, and we have to support these arts because there's a holism that is being introduced through that. And the fringes aren't, I know before I left the Bay Area, I loved it. There was a big, huge billboard by Presbyterian and said, we now approve acupuncture. And then the fine line underneath is yes, it only took us 3,000 years.
Right on. Right, right
That's
on.
an example
But
of it. It's like,
Medicare still doesn't, Medicare itself, the Advantage plans do, but the Medicare itself doesn't cover acupuncture.
right. And it's such a funny thing. These are examples again of, our conditioning also involves our acceptance of what is proper mental health wise and the proper way of doing healing. And it's funny, I was having a conversation with a medical guy, not a medical guy, a science researcher. And I said, I have this funny kind of argument with many people who about science is, they have this idea, like, in fact, I get in the argument with my dad all the time. He says, oh, well, science is irrefutable and da 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 da. I'm like, religion. I'm like, no. I said, and my argument is eggs and cholesterol. Because years ago, the guy who was the head of whatever scientific thingy that allowed testing had a thing against cholesterol and decided, hey, you know what, we're going to say it's about eggs. A Danish scientist goes on a diet for 90 days, only eating eggs. His cholesterol goes down. Other Americans do the testing and find not to be true. And those results don't get published because that man holds so much power. Here again, there's that 1%.
Right.
So, we have to really pay attention to what is truth. And just because one person or 10 people, like you said, I really like how you said that, like one person or a community or a group, a religious group is a community, right? And there's a certain brainwashing or conditioning that goes on when we're involved in these. It makes us look at the world in a certain way. And those of us who awaken, not to be confused with this whole woke movement, which I'm not even going to go into at this moment, but awaken to the fact that, that we are of the water and we are a drop of the water, and how to hold that in a way that is meaningful for ourselves as well as for all those we interact with. That's where we have to change. And I think that's where we're going. And part of this Aryan energy with all those planets and Aries, I think, is there's going to be more and more of these disruptions. I mean, yesterday here in Santa Fe, we had a shooting at one of the rail stations. So there's, that's, the other thing is people are really sensitive, pick up on that. And with this kind of reactive energy, when people don't have much fuse left, when they're at their limits, they act out. And that's another prime example of this sort of energy, because there isn't like the time to think about it.
And this, your thing about the water made me think also, we're talking about a sign, Aries. It's a fire sign. We are also about fire. Matter of fact, science has shown that we come from stars. We are stardust put together. And so we are a part of the sun, of suns, of stars. Whether we could do this with each of the elements and show.
The Serbian proverb is, be noble, for you are made of stars, and be humble, for you are made of earth.
Exactly.
How can people find you, Merrylin?
Moonwiseastrology.com, phone number 505-690-1878. Subscribe to this YouTube and share it with people that you know. And you, Michael?
Thank you. I can be reached at michael@cornmichael.com or my website, cornmichael.com. And my phone number 505-690-3860. Always a treat to talk with you, Merrylin. Thank you all for listening to us today. Hope you have a great day out there. Watch that instinctual energy and be as true to yourself as you can be, because that's what we're all here to do.
Bye for now.